Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary McHugh, as you and I have discussed, Joint Base Lewis-McChord in my home state of Washington is facing some very real questions on the way they have diagnosed PTSD and the invisible wounds of war. Today, unfortunately, we are seeing more information on the extent of those problems. This is actually a copy of today's Seattle Times, and in it is an article that is based on the most recent review of the Forensic Psychiatry Department at JBLM, which, as you know, is under investigation for taking the cost of mental health care into account in their decisions. And what this article shows is that since that unit was stood up in 2007, over 40% of those service members who walked in the door with a PTSD diagnosis had their diagnosis changed to something else or overturned altogether. What it says is that over 4 in 10 of our service members, many who were already being treated for PTSD and were due the benefits and care that came with that diagnosis, had it taken away by that unit. And then they were sent back into the force or into their community. Now, in light of all the tragedies that we have seen stem from the untreated, invisible wounds of war today, I'm sure that you would agree that this is very concerning. And not only is it damaging for our soldiers, but it also really furthers the stigma for others that are, whether they're deciding to seek help or not today. So in light of all of the issues, you and I have had a chance to talk to in this generally, but I wanted to ask you specifically today, why was this highly controversial unit set up originally at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, and whose decision was it to do that?
Do you mean the forensic department itself?
Correct.
Well, for every base where you demobilize soldiers, it is practice to have that capacity. The concern, as you noted, Senator, is that at least statistically, and the numbers are changing every moment. They've changed since that newspaper went to print.
Do you have the most recent numbers?
I don't have them exactly, but the number of cases and reevaluation is somewhat over 300 now.
But it is over 40%.
I haven't done the exact math, but I think that's a pretty accurate figure.
Yeah.
So the question for us is, why in this one unit were those kinds of reevaluations and change in diagnosis achieved? It's not totally unheard of that a psychiatric or a mental health condition will change. So I don't want to say all of those diagnoses and changes were inappropriate, but clearly when you have those kinds of data, we want to make sure that everything is appropriate. And as you and I have discussed, to the Army Surgeon General's credit, General Patty Araujo, she has immediately stepped forward, has asked and has had that particular unit step down, and has conducted a wholesale re-examination that has begun with 14 soldiers and will methodically go through all of them to make sure that the changes were not, in fact, inappropriate.
Do you know who made the original decision to step up that unit?
To actually form it?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the officer's name.
Okay. And can you tell me, is this an isolated incident, or are there other Army medical centers that are changing PTSD diagnoses at this rate?
I'm sorry. That's what we have to be sure of. The Surgeon General has asked the Inspector General of the Army to go and examine all of similar facilities and locations. To this point, we don't see any evidence of this being systemic. But as you and I have discussed, we want to make sure that where this was inappropriate, it was an isolated case, and if it were not, to make sure we address it as holistically as we're trying to address it at Madigan.
Have you examined similar statistics for all the other installations?
All reevaluations are being looked at and evaluated.
Okay, so that is being done. Can you provide us with that information?
We'll certainly keep you up to date on that, yes.
All right. Well, as you know, the review by that forensic psychiatry at Madigan was a change from the standard disability evaluation process used across the military. The integrity of the disability evaluation system depends on each and every service member being subject to the same process. across the Army, what will be done to improve the oversight of the disability evaluation system to make sure that the same process is being applied system-wide?
Well, as I said, the Inspector General, along with the Surgeon General, re-examining the application of all diagnostic procedures. You noted correctly, we have a very standardized system. It's a system that is utilized similarly in the VA evaluations, similarly in civilian evaluations, and we are restating to all of our providers that that is the diagnostic protocol that they will follow. And equally important, that fiscal considerations are not in any way a part of the evaluations. It's simply unacceptable.
And you're making that clear system-wide?
We're doing everything we can to make that clear system-wide. Yes, Senator.
Okay.
Well, Senator, if I could just add to that one point. For us, it's about we should be patient advocates. And that's the mindset we're going to work on changing to make sure everybody understands that. We are patient advocates. We are trying to get the best for what is right for our soldiers.
General, I really appreciate that, and I have to say I've been here for 10 years since the beginning of this war, at many, many hearings, hearing that from the top, and I agree that that is what everyone is saying. But it's really disconcerting after 10 years to find now that that has not been the case. So that's, why I think it's really important that we really focus on this, not just at Madigan and what happened there, but system-wide. To make clear that this is, it isn't the cost of PTSD or any mental health evaluation that is of concern to the Army or to the military at all. It is making sure that those men and women get the care that they receive. So, it is very troubling to be here 10 years after this, after many, many hearings and many, many questions to find out this has been occurring. And really, one of the most troubling aspects of these recent events at Madigan is that service members were diagnosed with PTSD and other mental health disorders during their military service. They received treatment for those conditions, but then when they entered the MEB process, they had that diagnosis changed. So that is very troubling to every one of us that has been watching this for a very long time. And I did want to ask you what changes you are seeking Army-wide to make sure that behavioral health care diagnoses are more consistent between those who are providing care and those conducting the disability evaluations.
Well, as I said, Senator, the basic answer to that is the processes and the protocols of diagnosis are the same. You're always going to have individual practitioners who take a somewhat different view as to what they're observing in a particular patient, but that is what training is about, trying to eliminate to the greatest extent possible those vagaries. But in terms of the standards of evaluation, whether it's an MEB or whether it is a post-deployment mental health evaluation, those diagnostic touch points are all the same and standardized. And the Surgeon General and certainly the IG, as he does his analysis across this system, are making that very, very clear, and we'll continue to press that as well.
Okay, well, as I said, this is an extremely disconcerting situation. I want to know if it's system-wide because these men and women, the stigma of mental health care is something that's very real. The challenges of PTSD and mental health care are real, and no one should be denying any service member care purely because of a question of cost. That is something that taxpayers of this country bear the burden of providing. We will provide it, but we want to make sure that, that the Army is not dismissing this in any way, shape, or form. So we will continue to follow this and continue to stay in touch with you as these different questions are answered, but I want to make sure that we are really looking not just at Madigan. Now, obviously, that's clearly where the focus is right now, but system-wide to make sure that we are evaluating all of these on the same system and that there is no discretionary concern about cost or anything else, that we get these men and women the care that they have earned and they deserve and this country expects them to have.
As I've said, Senator, we appreciate truly your leadership on that, and we are in full agreement of your perspective. Fiscal considerations should be non-existent, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure they are.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.